Through the unforgiving snowfall and biting wind, Max's truck thundered along the icy road. The storm had transformed the once bustling highway into a desolate stretch, with only a few brave souls venturing out into the tempestuous weather. Every now and then, a lone car would zip past, quickly disappearing into the swirling snow, its taillights fading into the white abyss. Inside the cozy confines of the truck, Max's gaze shifted to a photograph of his wife, Iris, hanging from the rearview mirror. Her radiant smile, frozen in that small frame, filled his heart with warmth. With Christmas just on the horizon, his anticipation was tangible. On the final stretch of his long journey back home, Max's heart swelled with excitement. He had traveled across the country, crisscrossing from one end to the other, all for this moment. In the glove compartment of his truck, he carefully retrieved a beautifully wrapped box containing a special gift for Iris. Inside, a gleaming gold necklace awaited, promising joy and happiness. With a smile on his face, Max placed the box back in its spot, knowing that soon it would be in Iris's hands. As he pressed down on the accelerator, the truck powered through the thickening snow, heading towards the city's twinkling lights. Finally reaching a truck stop, Max decided to continue the rest of the way on foot. Walking through the streets, a wave of nostalgia washed over him. The town had changed since his departure, shedding its gloomy autumn days. Even under a grey sky, there was now a tangible warmth in the air. The streets were alive with bustling individuals, their expressions aglow with the joyous spirit of the season. They paused momentarily to appreciate the festive mistletoe and the beautiful holiday decorations that adorned the shop windows. Max's pace quickened with anticipation, eager to reunite with Iris and embark on their Christmas festivities side by side. With the anticipation of the surprise gift he had in store for her, he couldn't help but imagine the joy and laughter that would fill their humble abode. This thought propelled him forward, each step serving as a beat in the symphony of his return. As Max leisurely made his way into the bustling apartment complex, the familiar sounds of the neighborhood enveloped him like a warm embrace. He greeted his neighbors with a nod and a genuine smile, their hurried footsteps resonating against the sturdy concrete walls. "Evening, Mr. Thomas," he called out cheerfully to the elderly man shuffling past. Mr. Thomas looked up, his face adorned with deep wrinkles, and reciprocated the greeting with a wide grin. "Evening, Max. Beautiful weather we're having, don't you think?" "Can't complain," Max agreed, his gaze shifting towards a young mother struggling with a baby carriage at the bottom of the stairs. Driven by an instinctive impulse, he approached her without hesitation. "Hey, let me lend you a hand," he offered. The mother, her tired eyes revealing a hint of relief, gratefully nodded in response. "Thank you so much," she expressed her gratitude. "These stairs are an absolute nightmare with this thing." Together, they carefully navigated the narrow staircase, ensuring the baby remained blissfully unaware of the exertion. Upon reaching the third floor, she thanked him once more. As Max stood outside his own door, a mischievous spark ignited in his eyes. With a suppressed excitement, he discreetly pressed the doorbell and swiftly retreated behind the wall, his heart pounding with anticipation of the surprise he had planned for Iris. In his mind, he envisioned her opening the door, her eyes scanning the area, and then the sheer delight that would wash over her face upon spotting him. However, seconds turned into minutes, and the expected sounds of laughter and joyful astonishment never materialized. Instead, a heavy silence hung in the air, causing Max's brow to furrow with confusion. He stepped back into view and pressed the bell again, but a sense of unease began to crawl up his spine. "Iris," he called out, his voice echoing faintly through the empty hallway. "Are you there?" The echoes remained unanswered, deepening the knot of worry. The playful anticipation that once filled Max's mind now dissolved into a cold, gnawing concern. As he reached for the doorknob, his thoughts raced with possibilities of why Iris hadn't responded. Perplexed and with a growing frown etched on his face, Max searched through his pockets, finally finding the cool metal of his keys. With an eerie finality, the lock clicked open, amplifying his unease. "Hello? Is anyone home?" he called out, stepping into the dark and unwelcoming hallway. His voice reverberated through the apartment, a forced cheerfulness masking his growing unease. "I'm home. Surprise, my love." But the apartment offered no response, only an eerie silence that hung in the stale air. The scent of disuse weighed heavily, permeating every corner. Ignoring the need to remove his shoes, a habit he had adopted from Iris, Max cautiously made his way through the apartment. The living room remained unchanged, yet unsettlingly still. The couch cushions sat undisturbed, the television screen a vacant, lifeless eye. "Iris," he called out once more, his voice now a mere whisper of fading hope. The kitchen, once the heart of their home, felt devoid of warmth and vitality. No dirty dishes cluttered the sink, no lingering aroma of their last shared meal. Even the refrigerator hummed a solitary tune, its door adorned with irrelevant grocery lists and forgotten reminders. At last, he pushed open the bedroom door, his last glimmer of hope clinging on. The bed lay perfectly made, the sheets smooth and untouched, as if waiting for an occupant who would never return. His heart sank. The undeniable evidence lay in the untouched, substantial layer of dust that blanketed everything in the room. It whispered the untold narrative of Iris's prolonged absence, possibly spanning days or even weeks. Max's thoughts sprinted, a flurry of unsettling inquiries that grew more disconcerting with each passing moment. Max's mind raced with worry as he pondered where she could have disappeared to without a single word. The absence of any contact from her only heightened his growing alarm. His heart pounded in his chest, a relentless beat of anxiety. In a rush, he grabbed his phone, hoping for some answers, only to be met with a lifeless screen, drained of all battery power. Frustration surged through him, and he flung the useless device aside, its clatter echoing in the empty apartment. The silence that enveloped him felt suffocating, suffused with unanswered questions. Determined, he hurried towards the table where the landline sat, his movements fueled by desperation. But what awaited him there was not the solution he sought, but rather the conclusion to all his uncertainties. His eyes fell upon a note, its words penned in Iris's unmistakable, graceful script. "I'm sorry. It didn't work out," he read aloud, each word piercing his heart like a sharp jab. "I realized I deserve more. I've found someone else and discovered happiness. May the same befall you. Farewell." The word farewell reverberated in his thoughts, a harsh and conclusive whisper. His hands quivered as he crumpled the parchment, the smudged words distorting beneath his tightening grasp. Uttering a guttural cry of torment, he flung it against the wall, the paper's flight tragically fleeting, yet its reverberation filling the vacant chambers. What is the true significance of those words? Max's voice faltered as he collapsed onto the couch, the cushions accepting his body but failing to alleviate his desolation. The room provided no solace, no response. Only in his memories did Iris, now a spectre, hold the key to his tumultuous storm of inquiries. In the eerie silence, he couldn't help but notice how little of her essence remained. Devoid of its vitality and warmth, yet within this emptiness, a faint, almost otherworldly fragrance lingered. Iris's perfume. It drifted from the slightly ajar wardrobe, a cruel reminder of her presence, now painfully absent. Lost in a whirlwind of recollections, Max's thoughts wandered to the origin of it all. Iris's workplace, a bustling fast food joint adorned with never-dimming neon lights. 2 years ago, their paths unexpectedly collided in that very spot. Iris had been a newcomer then, her eyes wide with a blend of excitement and apprehension that the city often ignited in those hailing from quieter, smaller towns. It was during one of his routine visits to the restaurant that Max's eyes first fell upon her. Amidst a growing line of disgruntled customers, she struggled with the cash register, her face reddening with humiliation. As Max approached the counter, ready to place his usual order, it was not his request that captured his attention, but rather her apologetic and flustered demeanor. "I apologize profusely," she stammered, her gaze darting anxiously towards her new colleagues. In response, Max offered a comforting smile. "No need to worry. It takes time to get the hang of things here. By the way, my name is Max." "Iris?" she had replied with a shy smile, her anxiety momentarily fading away. And so their story began. Max found himself drawn to the restaurant more frequently, seizing every opportunity to share tidbits of wisdom about the city. "You know," he had mentioned one day, "there's this incredible coffee shop just a couple blocks away. And if you ever find yourself lost, just look for the vibrant mural on 5th Street. It's a great landmark." As their connection grew, their conversations flowed effortlessly, mirroring the ceaseless rhythm of the city. Love blossomed amidst the clatter of trays and the enticing aroma of sizzling fries, an unexpected romance unfolding in their midst. In the most mundane of locations, their love story began. They exchanged vows, brimming with hopes and the promise of an intertwined future. But now, as Max lingered outside the restaurant, its neon sign flickering like a symbol of shattered dreams, all that remained of their once vibrant life was the echo of her laughter resonating in his mind and the crumpled note forgotten beneath the sofa. Pushing open the door, the familiar chime of the entrance bell seemed almost taunting in its cheerful melody. With a heavy heart, he stepped inside, each footfall a pilgrimage into a past that felt simultaneously near and irretrievably distant. The moment Max crossed the threshold, the cashier's customary exuberance vanished without a trace. Max's smile faded as he recognized the familiar face of the cashier, Joseph. There was an uneasy sense of recognition in Joseph's eyes, a stark contrast to the warm familiarity Max had grown accustomed to as Iris's husband. Approaching the counter, Max tried to maintain a composed demeanor despite the inner turmoil that churned within him. "Is Iris working today?" he asked, attempting to sound nonchalant. Joseph, usually friendly and talkative, now seemed at a loss for words. His eyes darted nervously as he hesitated, mumbling something incomprehensible. Leaning in closer, Max strained to catch Joseph's words. Sensing the tension, Joseph glanced over his shoulder before quickly disappearing into the back. When he finally returned, his discomfort was palpable. Joseph hesitated, avoiding eye contact with Max. "She stepped out," he finally said, his tone hinting at something being off. Max's intuition kicked in, sensing that there was more to the story. "Stepped out? Where did she go?" he probed, trying to uncover the truth. Joseph's apologetic tone didn't provide much clarity. "I honestly don't know, Max," he replied. "That's all the manager told me." The weight of unspoken truths hung in the air as Max's desire to speak with the manager intensified. Finally, Lucy, the manager, approached, her sympathetic expression revealing that there was more to this situation. Her ease held a reflection of understanding and empathy. Max's mind was instantly filled with a sense of sorrow that sent alarm bells ringing. As he approached, Lucy greeted him with an unusual softness in her voice, a departure from her usual brisk demeanor. Curiosity and concern filled Max's eyes as he searched Lucy's face for any sign, any indication of where Iris might be or how she was feeling. Finally, Lucy spoke, her voice filled with genuine remorse. "I apologize, Max," she said, her tone hushed and sincere. "Iris was here earlier, but she left in a rush." Max stepped out of the restaurant, the bitter cold air biting at his skin, a sharp contrast to the stifling atmosphere he had just left behind. As he walked, his mind raced with questions, desperately seeking answers to the sudden departure of Iris. He wasn't there to convince her to come back, but rather to find solace for the ache in his heart. The city streets, once filled with memories of their life together, now seemed empty and devoid of meaning. It occurred to him that Iris's co-workers must have sensed her unhappiness, yet they remained silent, respecting her privacy even in her absence. The uncertainty of whether she would return lingered in his thoughts, casting a shadow over his every step. The present moment exuded an unfamiliar and distant aura. Almost instinctively, he felt a magnetic pull towards a location adorned with joyful recollections. In that very place, surrounded by the magnificence of ancient structures and the delightful allure of a charming French bistro, they had once reveled in love, reveling in the comforting embrace of one another's presence. Immersed in a vast ocean of memories, Max's heart skipped a beat when a familiar silhouette materialized from within the confines of the restaurant. From afar, Max could see Iris's elegant movements, unmistakable even at a distance. She approached a sleek silver Mercedes, where a man dressed in impeccable attire stood, holding the door open for her. It was Miles, Iris's boss, renowned for his commanding presence and smooth, bald head. A rush of emotions overwhelmed Max. Shock, betrayal, and a haunting sense of reality crumbling before his eyes. Time seemed to stretch as Iris gracefully entered the car, the scene unfolding like a vivid tableau of his deepest fears materializing. Max remained rooted in place, the frigid air now insignificant compared to the icy grip of realization tightening around his heart. Miles, a figure enveloped in whispers and rumors. Max was no stranger to the tales, the whispered rumors that painted a dark picture of a past intertwined with money laundering and potential affiliations with criminal organizations. The word on the street was that Miles had utilized his questionable fortune to establish a lavish facade of legitimacy, boasting a portfolio of upscale restaurants, including the very one Iris had just departed. In the collective consciousness of the city, Miles held a position that evoked both fear and reverence. His vast wealth and powerful connections cast an imposing shadow, discouraging many from stepping out of line. However, Max couldn't help but feel a bitter cynicism towards this respect, founded solely on fear and material wealth. It lacked the solid groundwork of genuine admiration or moral uprightness. As the initial shock subsided and transformed into a profound, throbbing sense of betrayal, Max grappled with his emotions. The question gnawed at him relentlessly. Why Iris? How could she, someone he had always seen as honest and decent, choose to abandon him for a man like Miles? The truth settled heavily in his heart, weighing him down like lead. It wasn't just the loss of Iris that tormented him. It was the destruction of his perception of who she truly was. The Iris he had known, the one who had shared laughter and dreams with him, now felt like a stranger. Her choices were a puzzle wrapped in the allure of a life that Max couldn't fathom. Overwhelmed by desperation, Max lunged forward, his feet slipping on the slush-coated pavement. His heart raced in his chest, clinging to a flicker of hope. Max watched helplessly as the sleek Mercedes effortlessly merged into the flow of traffic. a symbol of the new life Iris had embraced. But it was too late. The car vanished around a corner, its tail lights flickering briefly before disappearing into the city's intricate maze. Left alone in the snow-covered street, Max's breath materialized in the freezing air, a visual reminder of his dwindling opportunities. He pulled his hat lower, a feeble defense against the biting cold, and then raised his hood, shrouding himself in darkness and fabric. With his head bowed against the frigid wind, Max set off, his steps determined and brisk. The bustling sidewalk seemed to close in around him, each passerby oblivious to the unraveling of his world. For days, Max drifted through a fog of alcohol, lost in his own thoughts. Reality's harsh edges dissolved into a hazy mist, numbing his senses. The once shared sanctuary of the apartment now reverberated with the specters of memories, each room serving as a painful reminder of a life that had slipped through his grasp. In these solitary moments, his mind teetered on the precipice between dreams and waking nightmares. The slightest sound would startle him, his heart leaping with a flicker of hope that refused to extinguish. The floorboards creaking, the wind whispering against the windows, every noise seemed to herald Iris's return. And each time, propelled by desperate optimism, he would rush to the hallway with an intensity that contradicted his despair. But the doorway remained empty, a silent testament to his abandonment. As grief washed over Max, his knees gave way, causing him to crumple onto the unyielding floor. The frigid tiles bore witness to his anguish, while his clenched fist met the ground, a tangible outlet for the storm of emotions that consumed him. In the vast emptiness, the resounding thuds reverberated, providing a sharp contrast to the oppressive silence that enveloped him. In a state of intoxicated delusion, he was convinced that he caught a glimpse of Iris's face peering through the window, her smile a haunting illusion. His heart skipped a beat as he scrambled onto the ledge, his trembling fingers struggling with the latch, the treacherous fall from the fourth floor barely registering in his mind. But all he encountered was a faint breeze and the desolate darkness, Iris's image dissipating into nothingness. His life, precariously balanced on the edge both literally and metaphorically, might have spiraled further if not for the timely intervention of Mr. Thomas, his elderly neighbor residing downstairs. Stirred by the incessant noise, the old man was compelled to venture to Max's door in the early hours of the morning. On the morning of Christmas, Max, with tired eyes and messy hair, stumbled to the door. As he opened it, he saw Mr. Thomas standing there, checking his watch that displayed 3:20 a.m. "Oh, it's you," Max muttered, his voice filled with weariness. Mr. Thomas entered the apartment, his greeting of Merry Christmas sounding nonchalant. His eyes swiftly scanned the room, taking in the chaos. Empty bottles scattered across the living room, unwashed dishes piled up, and an atmosphere of neglect that hung in the staley air. Max followed behind him, feeling a deep sense of shame as his cheeks flushed. Running his fingers through his disheveled hair, he confessed, "I've had enough of this." He used a T-shirt to wipe away the traces of his recent emotional collapse, attempting to conceal the aftermath. With a hushed tone, he admitted, "There's no joy in celebrating. It feels more like mourning." His voice barely above a whisper, he continued, "My wife has left me, and I've turned to alcohol for solace." Max extended a glass of whiskey towards Mr. Thomas, offering, "Care to join me?" Accepting the glass, Mr. Thomas's hand remained steady as he took a contemplative sip. Taking a seat in the armchair, he gestured for Max to join him, silently inviting him to share his burdens. Max sank into the couch, his words flowing out effortlessly, untangling the complicated tale of his relationship with Iris in the soft glow of the living room. His voice quivered with a mixture of bewilderment and anguish as he recounted the intricate details, the painful breakup, the heart-wrenching note, and the shattered remnants of their once shared life now scattered in disarray. Did I have a decent income? Absolutely. It may not have been as much as her new boyfriend, but it wasn't too shabby either. Did I take her on a trip to Cancun? You bet. And gifts? Countless, he listed off, each one a testament to his love and devotion. I don't know, man, Max continued, his eyes drifting into the distance as if seeking answers within the shadows of the room. Maybe I missed something after all. I gave her everything she needed. Perhaps it is due to my status as an orphan, Max pondered, his words carrying a hint of vulnerability that he rarely revealed. It is true that I spent my childhood in an orphanage devoid of parents, but I cannot be held accountable for that. Mr. Thomas listened attentively, his face reflecting understanding. He took a sip of whiskey, feeling the fiery liquid slide down his throat as he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. No, my dear Max, that is not the reason, Mr. Thomas responded gently, his head shaking slightly in a gesture of empathy. Max, let me tell you about the unpredictable nature of human beings. They have a tendency to proclaim undying love one moment, only to move on to someone new the next. This behavior isn't limited to just one gender. Men are just as guilty. I once knew a man who experienced the pain of being abandoned by his wife. In a twisted act of vengeance, he turned around and left the next woman he encountered. But in the end, who was truly harmed by his actions? Alone he sits, drowning his sorrows in a sea of solitude. Oh, the intricacies of human nature, Max ponders, as he absorbs each word spoken by Mr. Thomas, a blend of melancholy and undeniable truth. Their eyes lock, an unspoken invitation for Max to unleash his innermost fears. I'm lost, Max confesses, his voice shattering the silence. Iris was my love, and yet she inflicted this pain upon me. What purpose is there for me to continue living? Why bother with life anymore? Mr. Thomas pondered his response, choosing his words with great care. Well, Max, sometimes you can simply live without any specific purpose. If she decided to leave, then perhaps she wasn't the right person for you. Why mourn for someone who made the choice not to stay? Consider it a liberation from a weight on your shoulders. If you were drowning and she made no effort to save you, would you still cling to her? Life, my dear Max, is a priceless treasure. It is meant to be embraced and savored. Max's heart sank as he absorbed the weight of Mr. Thomas's words, causing him to release a deep, heavy sigh. A glimmer of understanding broke through the haze of despair, prompting him to apologize. I'm truly sorry for all the trouble I've caused you. Determination filled his voice as he made a decision. I won't be around tonight. I'm leaving town, so you won't have to worry about me on Christmas Eve. Hastily, Max located his scattered clothes and swiftly dressed himself. Seeking solace, he headed towards the bathroom, surprised by the therapeutic effect the conversation with Mr. Thomas had on him. With a gentle groan, Mr. Thomas rose from his chair, his aged bones protesting the movement as he shuffled towards the exit. "Merry Christmas," he called out, his voice radiating warmth that starkly contrasted the frigidness of the apartment. From the depths of the bathroom, Max's voice echoed, tinged with a bittersweet acknowledgement. "Merry Christmas," he replied, his words said with a hint of uncertainty. As the door softly closed behind Mr. Thomas, Max whispered to himself, "I can't say for certain if it will be a Merry Christmas, but only time will tell." Alone in his apartment, bathed in the soft glow of the Christmas morning, Max braced himself for the start of a new chapter in his life, filled with unknowns. In the midst of despair, a glimmer of hope emerged unexpectedly, courtesy of a wise neighbor. While families gathered in cozy homes celebrating Christmas Eve, Max found himself alone, navigating his truck along a snow-covered highway. The world outside was a hazy expanse of white, the road barely discernible through the relentless snowfall. With a desperate determination, he pressed on, eager to leave behind the shattered remains of a life that had crumbled without warning. Though the icy road demanded caution, Max's thoughts were elsewhere, consumed by a whirlwind of memories and remorse. The desolate highway mirrored his own overwhelming sense of loneliness. The night enveloped in silence, except for sporadic bursts of fireworks reflecting in the rearview mirror. Max yearned for a glimmer of happiness. Desperate to infuse some cheer into the moment, he switched on the car's music, filling the speakers with the melodies of festive songs. Each note served as a bitter reminder of a time when Christmas was synonymous with joy and excitement. Raising a box of grape juice to his lips, Max offered a solitary toast to himself. "Merry Christmas," he whispered, his voice barely audible amidst the music. As a firework exploded to the left, illuminating the darkness with a vibrant display of colors, a small smile tugged at Max's lips. It was a stark contrast to the bleak Christmases of his challenging childhood. Yet those memories held a certain nostalgic charm, a reminder of simpler days filled with hope. Once a cherished time of year, Christmas now felt like just another day to Max. As he drove through the snowy expanse, he whispered a silent holiday greeting to the unseen revelers behind the forest. Pressing on the gas pedal, he disappeared into the winter landscape. 2 weeks later, as Max made his way back to the city, the holiday season had become a distant memory. The crisp January morning signaled a return to the routines of everyday life. Glancing at the dashboard, he couldn't ignore the ominously low fuel gauge. Just in time, a sign for a nearby gas station appeared, and he veered off the highway with a sense of relief. Max's journey was interrupted by a sudden burst of activity as he pulled up to the gas station. The frigid air stung his skin as he stepped out of the car, making his way towards the gas pump. Anxious for a moment of respite from the cold, he approached the entrance of the building. Just as he reached out to open the door, it swung open with force, revealing a man in nothing but a shirt. Startled by the unexpected sight, Max couldn't help but pause, his curiosity piqued. The cashier's alarmed and hurried expression added to the sense of unease that washed over him. This unexpected encounter shattered the tranquility of his journey, leaving him both intrigued and concerned as he watched the cashier's every move. Max's irritation dissolved in an instant when the cashier's desperate cry pierced through the air, compelling him to abandon his initial annoyance and follow the man into the store. As he entered, a shocking scene unfolded before his eyes. A young woman lay sprawled on the floor, her features twisted in agony as she tightly held onto her abdomen. Max's eyes widened in sheer alarm. What on earth is happening here? Is she in the throes of childbirth? He blurted out, involuntarily recoiling a step. "Why haven't you contacted emergency services?" he asked, his voice filled with both worry and bewilderment. "I already did. They're en route, but there's been a collision on the highway, so their arrival might be delayed," the cashier responded, his voice trembling with panic. "Could you transport her to the hospital? Your truck might be able to make it?" Without any hesitation, Max nodded, momentarily setting aside his own concerns in the face of this urgent situation. "I'll take her, but I'll need at least 30 gallons of diesel," he stated, the urgency evident in his voice. With a sense of urgency in his voice, Max urged the cashier to hurry. Amidst the chaos, he calmly lifted the woman, his arms unwavering, and settled her gently into the passenger seat of his truck. Despite the circumstances, he made sure she was as comfortable as possible. As soon as the truck was prepared, Max swiftly took his place behind the wheel, his mind fully focused on the task ahead. Unexpectedly, the woman in the midst of her agony turned to him and exclaimed, "You're alive!" Confusion washed over Max as he realized that her words were likely a result of her delirium caused by the pain. "Ma'am, I'm not Jack," he calmly assured her, his voice betraying the rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins. With determination, he started the truck, the engine roaring to life as he skillfully maneuvered onto the road. His hands tightly gripped the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the snowy path ahead. Every passing second felt crucial, igniting a newfound clarity and purpose within him that had been absent for weeks. Max's truck raced through the city streets, finally arriving at the hospital entrance. Despite the urgency, his priority remained ensuring the woman's safety in the hands of the medical professionals. As Max bid farewell to the staff, he couldn't shake the image of the woman's anguished face and her mistaken belief that she knew him. Driving through the quiet streets of the city, he couldn't escape the haunting gaze she had fixed upon him. It was unsettling how strongly she recognized him, even in the midst of her pain. This encounter made him ponder the intricate web of connections between people, the countless lives intersecting in ways beyond comprehension. Unable to find solace in sleep, Max decided to rise at midnight and seek the company of Mr. Thomas. The elderly man, accustomed to late nights since his wife's passing, warmly welcomed Max with a steaming cup of coffee. The softly lit room, filled with cherished memories, and the gentle ticking of an old clock provided a soothing backdrop as they began to converse. Max found himself recounting the unexpected tale of his involvement in assisting a pregnant stranger. The wise words of Mr. Thomas echoed in his thoughts, urging him to pay the woman a visit as the chess pieces glided across the board in a contemplative dance. As Max lay in bed that night, the events of the day resurfaced, forming a puzzle with pieces that seemed to be missing. The following morning, driven by a blend of curiosity and a lingering sense of incompleteness, Max was compelled to take action once again. Once again, he found himself standing within the sterile walls of the hospital. Stepping through the entrance, his presence caught the attention of a nurse. A broad smile stretched across her face, brimming with anticipation. With a hint of both puzzlement and gentle admonishment, she inquired, "Are you the father?" Max's bewilderment mirrored the nurse's, yet for entirely different causes. Attempting to make sense of the situation, he mustered a weary and perplexed tone. "I believe there has been a misunderstanding," he began, only to be interrupted by the nurse's continuing laughter. Flipping through a stack of papers, she mentioned that your wife had mentioned her husband bringing her to this place. "You must be her husband, right?" she playfully inquired, meeting Max's tired gaze. He was too worn out to clarify the misunderstanding. "May I have a moment with her? I just need to ask her something," Max requested, his voice weighed down by weariness and exasperation. The nurse's smile faded as she gently shook her head. "I'm sorry, but Samantha is currently resting," she replied. In a state of professional composure, the nurse delivered the news to Max. His wife had experienced a significant loss of blood during childbirth and was currently receiving intensive care. Visitation would be permitted in 3 days' time. But then the nurse added an unexpected detail. They had a child, a cute little boy who was doing well. The mention of a child sent Max's mind spinning, his expectations suddenly shattered. He muttered to himself, "So her name is Samantha," as a small piece of the puzzle fell into place. However, the overall picture remained hazy and bewildering. As he departed, the nurse's laughter and offhand comment about him being strange lingered in the air. Max's world, already thrown into disarray by recent events, felt even more unstable. The echoes of those events reverberated in his ears, intensifying the tilt of his reality. 3 days later, Max found himself back at the hospital, a mix of curiosity, anxiety, and an unusual sense of duty pulsing through his heart. When he finally encountered Samantha, the words eluded him for a moment, leaving her wide-eyed and speechless. In a sudden burst of emotion, Samantha cried out, "Oh, Jack," and embraced Max tightly. He comfortingly patted her back and guided her to a nearby chair, taking a seat beside her. As Samantha's sobs gradually subsided into quiet sniffles, Max attentively listened, setting aside his own troubles. In a momentary lapse of memory, the name slipped from her mind. With deliberate kindness, he handed her a glass of water, his movements filled with compassion. Perching gently on the edge of the bed, Max's voice was soft yet resolute. "I apologize, but I am not acquainted with whoever you believe me to be. My name is Max," he spoke, hoping to gently dispel her illusion. Reaching into his pocket, he retrieved his driver's license, offering it as tangible evidence. "We crossed paths 4 days ago. I was the one who brought you here." He extended the license towards Samantha. As her eyes fell upon it, Samantha's face crumbled, tears welling up and cascading down her cheeks. Trembling, the weight of reality crashed upon her. Her sobs echoed through the room, each word cracking with pain as she expressed her desperate hope that Jack was still alive. Seeking solace in the kindness of a stranger, Samantha leaned into Max, her tears dampening his shoulder. "You bear such a striking resemblance to him," she managed to whisper, her voice filled with shattered dreams. The possibility of a Christmas miracle had flickered in her heart, only to be extinguished by the cruel reality. As Samantha's tears subsided into quiet sniffles, Max moved slowly and with care, offering her a glass of water. With empathy lacing his gentle curiosity, he softly inquired, "If you're willing, could you share with me what happened to Jack?" Samantha nodded, her trembling hand bringing the glass to her lips as she mustered the strength to begin her heartbreaking tale. "Jack, my beloved husband, bore a striking resemblance to you," she began, her voice quivering with emotion. "Sadly, he departed from this world 3 months ago. He possessed an entrepreneurial spirit and poured his heart into his car service business." Pausing to collect her thoughts, she continued, "Our lives took an unexpected turn when Brooks, an old comrade from Jack's army days, re-entered our existence. Brooks had endured a tumultuous past, having served time in prison for a tragic altercation. Upon his release, he faced countless challenges in securing steady employment. Samantha's grip tightened on the hospital blanket, her fingers twisting nervously as she relived the painful memories. Jack, driven by his desire to help, had offered Brooks a position as a mechanic. However, Brooks yearned for more, aspiring to be a manager. Jack, knowing he couldn't trust Brooks with such responsibility, had to decline. Samantha's voice quivered, holding back tears as she recounted the strain in their relationship. Brooks harbored resentment towards Jack for denying him the promotion. Day by day, the tension between them grew, while Brooks skillfully concealed his true emotions behind a friendly facade. But cracks began to appear in that facade when Brooks extended an unexpected invitation to Jack for a weekend fishing trip. Samantha's unease lingered in her memory. "I had a bad feeling about it," she admitted, regret seeping into her voice. But Jack, always the optimist, placed his trust in Brooks and dismissed any potential harm. Unfortunately, the trip took a tragic turn. Samantha's hands quivered as she recounted the heart-wrenching news of Jack's fall overboard, becoming entangled in the fishing equipment beyond anyone's rescue. Her voice carried a hint of doubt. Everyone believed Brooks' account, as who would have been present on the river during the early hours of that October morning to witness the truth? Max's gaze locked with Samantha's, her eyes filled with an unsettling certainty. Yet, Jack, always cautious and equipped with a life vest, was a skilled swimmer. It didn't add up. Tears welled up in Samantha's eyes once again, cascading down her cheeks as Max tenderly refilled her glass with water. "I'm deeply sorry," Max murmured, his head bowed in a gesture of shared grief. "Sorry for your loss and everything that has unfolded since." His next question hung in the air, hesitant. "How did you find yourself at the gas station without your coat?" Samantha inhaled deeply, trying to steady herself, wiping away her tears. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled with vulnerability. "Brooks became a constant presence in my life after Jack's passing. He persistently pursued me, proposing marriage and offering to help raise my child." The disbelief and despair in her eyes were evident as she shook her head. "Despite my repeated refusals and pleas for him to leave me alone, he remained relentless, always returning. Eventually, I reached a breaking point and stopped allowing him into my life. However, one fateful day, as I returned from the shop, Brooks intercepted me. He forcefully placed me in his car and drove us to a secluded area in the woods. Unfortunately, the car broke down there. Desperate to escape, I attempted to flee. Brooks managed to grab hold of my jacket, but I managed to break free, leaving the jacket behind. From that point on, my memories become hazy. I believe I ran until exhaustion took over, and the next thing I remember was waking up in your truck." Max nodded, his expression mirroring a mix of concern and curiosity, with a look of comprehension dawning on his face, as if the scattered fragments of a bewildering enigma had at last fallen into perfect alignment. He rose from his seat and bid Samantha a solemn farewell. Making his way down the dimly illuminated hospital hallway towards the staircase, he was on the verge of crossing the threshold when Samantha's voice, filled with delicate anticipation, stopped him in his tracks. "Max, once I'm released, would you be willing to take me home? I have no one else to rely on," Samantha pleaded, her words barely audible. Without a moment's hesitation, Max responded. "Without hesitation," he assured her. "You can count on me. I'll always be by your side." With a calmness that belied the chaos within, he swiftly jotted down his contact details on a torn piece of paper. "When you're ready to go, just give me a call. I'll be there for you in an instant." Samantha's hands quivered like leaves in the autumn breeze as she delicately held onto the paper, carefully tucking it into the pocket of her hospital gown. Gratitude filled her voice as she whispered, "Thank you." Her tear-filled gaze fixed upon Max, their connection unbreakable. "I'll wait for you," Max said, his footsteps fading away down the corridor. As he walked, a shiver ran through him, not from the cold, but from the weight of the moment they had just shared. The next day, driven by an unsolved mystery from his past, Max found himself standing in front of the orphanage where he had spent his childhood. The building, a sanctuary of memories, stood just as it had before. Its walls, painted a vibrant green, were adorned with larger-than-life images of superheroes, as if protecting the dreams of the children inside. The hallways reverberated with the familiar sounds of youthful energy, yet the faces of the children remained a mystery. Max couldn't help but notice the striking resemblance between the children before him and his own melancholic childhood. Their eyes held a glimmer of fragile hope, barely perceptible yet ever present. As Max made his way through the school, exchanging nostalgic greetings with familiar faces from the staff, he eventually found himself in the office of the headmistress, Hadley Sawyer. The room seemed to be frozen in time, its walls adorned with photographs capturing the countless children who had once walked through these very doors. Without wasting any time, Max jumped right into the reason for his arrival, his voice laced with a blend of nervousness and haste as he brought up Jack. As his words flowed, Mrs. Sawyer's countenance underwent a subtle transformation, a flicker of darkness passing over her face. She made her way to the window, her eyes fixed on the outside world as if searching for solutions in the scenery. As she began to speak, her voice carried a sense of sorrow, as if burdened by the weight of the past. "When you first arrived here, you were not alone," she said, her words tinged with regret. "On that bitterly cold winter day, there were 2 tiny infants in our care." Pausing for a moment, she turned away from Max, her gaze fixed on some distant memory. "Those were difficult years," she continued, her voice filled with the hardships they had endured. "We were overwhelmed with abandoned babies, struggling to find enough space for everyone." Taking a deep breath, she revealed the heart-wrenching decision they had made. "In the end, we had to make a choice. We decided to keep you here and give your brother to a childless couple who longed for a child." As she spoke, her reflection in the window seemed to flicker, mirroring the emotions that still haunted her. "I can still vividly recall the day they took your brother away," she whispered, her voice filled with the pain of that moment. "You cried inconsolably, and everyone tried their best to comfort you. The connection shared between twins is truly profound, a bond that runs deep. However, tragedy struck 3 years later when we learned that the couple had divorced. In a heartbreaking turn of events, your brother was given up and sent to another orphanage. At that time, our orphanage was already overwhelmed with children, and there was not a single spare bed available. This cruel twist of fate tore you apart from each other. I apologize deeply for not telling you sooner." The weight of this revelation crashed over Max like a powerful tidal wave, leaving him momentarily breathless. He gripped his head in his hands, trying to comprehend the magnitude of the truth. Could Jack still be alive? If only his wife could be spared from this immense sorrow. How did everything become so tangled and distorted? His voice trembled with a whirlwind of emotions. The figure of Mrs. Sawyer, outlined by the glow of the window, could only respond with a defeated shrug, burdened by the weight of choices made over the course of many years and the unforeseen outcomes they brought. "I apologize sincerely, Max. There are certain aspects of life that elude our understanding, beyond our influence," she murmured, her voice carrying the faint trace of regret. Overwhelmed by the suffocating atmosphere of revelations and repentance, Max abruptly stood up, causing his chair to scrape loudly against the floor. With a sense of liberation, he briskly departed from the confines of the office, each stride carrying him further away from an intangible weight that had burdened him. The orphanage, once a sanctuary of hope, now seemed like a chamber of forsaken dreams. Stepping into the open air, he inhaled deeply, as if emerging from the depths of a murky past. The journey home became a hazy blur, his mind entangled in a labyrinth of thoughts, occasionally interrupted by his habitual glances at the screen of his phone. However, the eagerly awaited call from Samantha remained frustratingly elusive, intensifying his already tumultuous emotions. It was not until the break of dawn the following day that the call he had been yearning for finally came. Samantha's voice, a mixture of relief and trepidation, shattered the stillness of the morning, informing Max of her release from the hospital. Filled with a sense of urgency, Max hailed a taxi and raced straight to the medical facility. Upon his arrival, he discovered Samantha outside, cradling their son, a poignant image of tender motherhood against the backdrop of the hospital. Max made his way closer. A smile crept onto his face as he beheld the baby's cherubic countenance cradled in Samantha's arm. Extending his hand, he delicately brushed the baby's nose with his finger, causing a sweet, bubbling sound to escape. "Let's go home," he whispered gently, his voice a comforting refuge amidst the chaos of their lives. With a solemn promise in his actions, he held open the car door for Samantha, pledging to protect and stand by them as they faced an uncertain future. Samantha's apartment, once nestled in the vibrant heart of the city, now stood in the shadow of the car service business that her husband, Jack, had painstakingly built. It had become a painful reminder of betrayal, as Brooks had deceitfully seized control through forgery. As they drove past, Samantha's eyes lingered sadly on the familiar building, her heart heavy with silent despair. Sensing her unease, Max reached out and gently placed his hand on hers, offering solace in his touch. Max settled the taxi fare upon arriving at the apartment complex, and together they entered the building. Samantha's grip on her son tightened as they approached, her voice barely audible as she whispered. "It's him," she said, nodding towards a figure in the distance. Shielding his eyes from the bright sun, Max could make out the tall, gaunt silhouette of Brooks. There was something unsettling about him, with his long black cloak and dark glasses that gave him an almost ghostly appearance. Brooks noticed Samantha and waved, his gesture filled with an unnerving nonchalance. In response, Max quickly averted his gaze, hiding his face to avoid being recognized. Sensing the urgency, Samantha clutched her son tightly and took hold of Max's hand, urging them to hasten towards the building, their steps quickening into a near run. Once inside her apartment, Samantha locked the door with a trembling hand, and Max found himself in a hallway that bore a striking resemblance to his own. He sank into the sofa in the living room, his eyes wandering around the modest space until they landed on a photograph resting on the chest of drawers, adorned with a black ribbon. As his eyes fell upon the image, a sharp breath escaped him. It was a picture of his twin brother, Jack. The resemblance was astonishing, the same sleek black hair, the same deep brown eyes, the same subtle curve of the lips. In that moment, Max felt as though he was gazing into a mirror, seeing his own reflection. The reality of the situation hit him like a tidal wave. It was no wonder Samantha had mistaken him for Jack. They were identical in every possible way. If Max hadn't known the truth beforehand, he might have questioned his own sanity upon seeing this exact replica of himself. Suddenly, a knock at the door shattered the tense silence in the apartment. Samantha, moving cautiously, peered through the peephole. Her body instinctively recoiled, a soundless gasp escaping her lips. Sensing the urgency, Max approached. A tremor of fear laced her voice as she spoke. The relentless pursuer had them cornered. Max quickly directed her to take her son to safety in his room. With a discreet touch, he activated the voice recorder on his phone, preparing for what was to come. Gathering himself, he opened the door, putting on a facade of calmness with a forced smile. "What brings you here, Brooks?" he asked, his tone steady. The color drained from Brooks's face, his body jerking back as if struck. He stumbled, nearly losing his balance and teetering on the edge of the railing. You're supposed to be dead," he stammered, his eyes darting around in a state of panic. Max interjected, his voice filled with deliberate calmness. "How did I survive being drowned?" Brooks confessed, his voice breaking, his posture deflating like a balloon losing air. I threw you off the boat," he choked out, his words laced with disbelief and panic. In an instant, fueled by a surge of righteous anger, Max seized Brooks by the collar, pulling him close. With a swift motion, his other hand delivered a powerful hook across Brooks's face. Max's voice slithered into his ear, dripping with menace. "I returned for you," he hissed, his words a chilling whisper. "Did you truly believe I wouldn't uncover your deceitful plots?" Max pressed Brooks against the railing, relishing in the sight of fear and realization dawning in Brooks's eyes, his body quivering uncontrollably. Brooks crumbled to the floor, a pitiful sight, consumed by tears and shattered. "There you have it," Max declared icily, his gaze unwavering. "Wouldn't it have been simpler to confess from the beginning? Do you feel any relief now? Your life is about to take a turn for the worse, Brooks. You're no stranger to prison, are you?" Leaving Brooks collapsed on the ground, Max stepped outside to contact the authorities. When they arrived, he handed them the damning evidence, his phone containing Brooks's unwitting admission. As Brooks slowly regained composure, he recounted his twisted belief that he had successfully ended Jack's life. "But it's time you learned the truth," Max interjected with a sly grin, observing as the police escorted Brooks out of the building. Brooks's words hit Brooks like a physical assault. His anger consumed him, and he desperately tried to regain control of the situation. "I'm not Jack! I'm his twin brother!" he exclaimed, his voice filled with desperation. "I didn't commit any murder. It was just a jokey. I'm mentally unstable, talking nonsense." Despite his protests, one of the officers firmly held Brooks back, speaking with authority. "You'll have the opportunity to explain everything at the police station, sir. Let's proceed." As the door closed behind them, Samantha appeared from the apartment, her face a mixture of worry and curiosity. Max shared every detail of the ordeal with her, each word relieving a burden from his shoulders. Overwhelmed by the unfolding events, Samantha couldn't hold back her tears. The subsequent investigation into Brooks's actions was complex and time-consuming. The lack of eyewitnesses to support the claim that Jack was pushed overboard posed a significant challenge for the prosecution. The trial faced numerous setbacks and uncertainties due to the absence of direct evidence, causing delays and raising concerns about the trial's fairness. However, just when it seemed like Brooks might be released due to a lack of substantial proof, a breakthrough occurred. Max, fooled by his unwavering pursuit of justice, managed to uncover two crucial witnesses, elderly fishermen who'd been present on the river that fateful morning. Their vivid recollections of seeing Brooks dispose of the body provided the much-needed boost to the case. With their testimonies, the court was finally able to deliver a harsh judgment. Brooks was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. As the judge pronounced the verdict, Samantha's grip on Max's hand tightened, a tangible display of her anxiety and hope. Relief washed over her as she heard the definitive words. Finally, Brooks would be locked away for a significant period of time. The dark cloud that had loomed over her life was finally dissipating. Once the courtroom had emptied, Samantha turned to Max, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and newfound determination. "Brooks will be confined behind bars. It's hard to believe that it's finally over," she murmured, her voice filled with a sense of profound relief. "However, now there is the issue of the car service. The mere thought of it collapsing is unbearable to me, yet I am unsure of how to handle it. Would you be willing to assist me with it?" Max responded with a reassuring smile, silently promising his support. "Of course, I will take care of it," he said, his voice filled with newfound determination. "I have actually been contemplating a career change, and this feels like the perfect moment, the right opportunity." In a spontaneous surge of emotion, Samantha leaned in, bridging the gap between them with a heartfelt kiss. Max reciprocated with equal fervor, their shared kiss sealing their unspoken commitment to face the future together. Wrapped in each other's embrace, they became oblivious to the world around them. The cold rain, the gusting wind, all faded into insignificance. For those 10 minutes amidst the storm, they found solace in one another, their kisses conveying a language of shared challenges, resilience, and optimism. Time swiftly passed, and before they knew it, half a year had gone by, and the festive season was upon them once again. The hustle and bustle of Christmas preparations filled the air as Max and Samantha worked together to transform their home into a winter wonderland. The twinkling lights on the tree cast a magical glow, while the gifts, adorned with shimmering paper, eagerly awaited their recipients. But this year, they longed for something more. They wanted to create memories that would last a lifetime. And so, they made a decision that would change their holiday forever. Max and Samantha had been happily married for 3 months, but they had been living in separate apartments. It was time to start their own traditions, to build a home together. They knew exactly where to find the warmth and love they were seeking, the home of their dear neighbor, Mr. Thomas. As they arrived at Mr. Thomas's house on Christmas evening, they were enveloped in the cozy embrace of holiday cheer. The air was filled with the scent of freshly baked cookies and the sound of joyful laughter. Mr. Thomas's eyes sparkled with childlike delight as he watched Samantha's young son, Charlie, playfully getting tangled in strands of tinsel. In that moment, surrounded by loved ones and the magic of the season, Max and Samantha knew they had found their special Christmas. It was a night filled with love, laughter, and the joy of creating new traditions. And as they exchanged heartfelt wishes under the twinkling lights, they couldn't help but feel grateful for the gift of family and the true meaning of Christmas. The sight before him stirred deep emotions within the elderly gentleman, causing his heart to swell. Sensing his overwhelming sentiment, Max skillfully redirected his attention by suggesting they uncork a bottle of wine, providing a comforting diversion. As they joined the merry gathering around the lavishly adorned table, Mr. Thomas lifted his glass, his voice brimming with the exuberance of the occasion. "Here's to all the blessings we have encountered and those that await us," he proclaimed with genuine warmth. In that precise moment, while the preparations for the grand feast carried on, Max found himself contemplating the tumultuous events that had unfolded throughout the preceding year. With a smile that stretched across his face, Max rose to his feet and directed his attention towards Mr. Thomas. "I must express my sincere gratitude to you, Mr. Thomas," he acknowledged, his eyes fixated on the champagne in his hand. "If it weren't for your timely intervention a year ago, none of what I have now would have been possible. I might have descended into a state of despair, losing myself and missing the opportunity to cross paths with Samantha and extend my assistance to her. Your wisdom and guidance have had an everlasting impact on me." The words flowed from his lips, filled with a profound sense of appreciation. "This toast is dedicated to you, Mr. Thomas," he declared, his voice resonating with deep gratitude. "Here's to happiness," Mr. Thomas whispered, raising his glass even higher. In a joyful moment, Samantha exclaimed, raising her glass alongside Max's in perfect harmony. Mr. Thomas had transcended the role of a mere neighbor for the couple. He had become an essential thread woven into the fabric of their family. His visits to their home were frequent, suffusing the atmosphere with a comforting warmth that only a person with a truly giving heart could provide. With a mischievous glimmer in his eyes, he would often arrive, eager to spend time with little Charlie, who had developed a deep affection for the kind-hearted elder. For Max and Samantha, Mr. Thomas's presence was nothing short of a divine gift. His wise counsel, often shared over steaming cups of tea or leisurely walks in the park, held immeasurable value. The sparkle in Mr. Thomas's eyes whenever he was in the presence of Charlie did not go unnoticed by the couple. It was as if the child had the magical ability to reignite a sense of purpose and happiness within the elderly man. And in return, Charlie's infectious laughter and boundless energy seemed to breathe new life into Mr. Thomas, filling him with a youthful vigor. As the days turned into weeks and months, Mr. Thomas gradually transformed into a beloved grandfather figure for Max, Samantha, and little Charlie. He embraced this role wholeheartedly, showering them with love and radiating enthusiasm from the depths of his soul. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day as they shared countless precious moments that seamlessly integrated him into the very fabric of their family. In the journey of life, Mr. Thomas stood by Charlie's side, witnessing and celebrating every significant milestone. His first words, his first steps. With each achievement, there was an overwhelming sense of joy and pride, as if Charlie were his own flesh and blood. Mr. Thomas had a knack for thoughtful gestures, often bringing small yet meaningful gifts for Charlie. Whether it was a hand-carved wooden toy or a book filled with vibrant pictures, each present symbolized his deep affection. What touched others the most was the way he spoke about them. To his friends and acquaintances, Max, Samantha, and Charlie were not just acquaintances, but his family. Though there was no blood relation, the bonds of love and respect they shared were unbreakable. In return, Max, Samantha, and Charlie filled a void in Mr. Thomas's life, giving him a sense of purpose and belonging during his later years. Max had found solace in the embrace of his family over the years, finding purpose and joy in their presence. On a particular day, he decided to surprise them with a delightful outing to their beloved local family restaurant. The cheerful jingle of the bell above the entrance announced their arrival as Max, accompanied by Samantha, Charlie, and Mr. Thomas, crossed the threshold. The cozy atmosphere of the eatery, filled with the comforting scent of homemade dishes and the gentle buzz of conversation, welcomed them wholeheartedly. While searching for a suitable table, Max's gaze unexpectedly collided with Iris, his former wife, now employed as a waitress in the very same establishment. Iris's face betrayed a brief moment of astonishment as she recognized Max, but she swiftly redirected her attention to her tasks. Mr. Thomas, always perceptive, leaned in closer to Max. "Do you know her?" he whispered, his voice laced with curiosity. Max responded in a hushed tone, devoid of any resentment. "Yes, that's Iris, my former spouse." Just as they were about to take their seats, Iris approached them, her demeanor a delicate balance between professional courtesy and personal unease. Iris's voice trembled as she began, "Max, Her gaze shifted momentarily to Samantha, then to Charlie, who was engrossed in conversation with Mr. Thomas about the festive decorations. But before she could finish her sentence, Max interjected with a gentle yet firm tone. "There's no need for explanations, Iris. That's all in the past. We've both moved forward." Iris nodded, her eyes welling up briefly. "I'm glad you've found happiness," she said, her gaze lingering on the family gathering. Sensing the emotional undercurrents, Mr. Thomas chimed in with his usual warmth and understanding. "Life has a remarkable way of imparting valuable lessons, often through unexpected avenues," Mr. Thomas reflected, his words brimming with warmth. Iris nodded in agreement, a glimmer of her former self returning as she reciprocated his reassuring smile. Taking their orders with regained composure, she swiftly made her way to the kitchen. As Iris walked away, Mr. Thomas placed a comforting hand on Max's shoulder, acknowledging his graceful handling of the situation. "The past may shape us, but it is the present that truly holds significance," he imparted sagely. Max nodded, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the life he now shared with Samantha, Charlie, and the invaluable presence of Mr. Thomas. The meeting with Iris served as a poignant reminder of the path he had traveled, yet the happiness and affection shared at his table were a testament to the beautiful present he had wholeheartedly embraced.